So first up, we have Dr. Ruth Mourik. She's a master's degree in anthropology and sociology, a master's degree in society and technology studies. She has a PhD in risk communication, controversy analysis, and public participation. Hands up if you've got one of those. No. She's one of the lead operating agents on an international energy agency task that's looking specifically at this issue of behaviour change and energy use. So she's been talking to the international experts around the world for the last 2 years or more, 3, and a lot of experience there. And she's been working on gathering together that international best practice and working out how to put this theory into action. So we're a little bit about that today. What are we going to do with this knowledge? So you might think about that as you listen to the talk. So without further ado, Ruth, the floor is yours.
I'm going to do things potentially a little bit different from what you're used to. I'm going to tell you fairy tales. I don't know if you ever have been told fairy tales when you were adults. You were? No? So I would like to ask you to be gentle with me. I was told by Brian to be gentle with you, but I'm going to ask you to return the favor in that sense. What I'm going to do is actually tell you about the project, the task that we have been running for the past 3 years. And that we are going to be running for the next 3 years ongoing. Task 24, it's called Closing the Loop, Behavioral Change from Theory to Practice. What we have been doing, I'm going to tell you that a little bit now because I don't have slides about it, is we have been collecting multiple case studies, more than 60 who are at this moment recorded in a big Wikipedia online. Everything is public, by the way, if you have any questions about that. We have been talking and working with more than 250 experts who are really committed, like Jim, for example, to participate in the task and share their knowledge with us, which was extremely helpful because it was like a smart grid around the world helping us when we were drafting reports to comment on them and tell us if we were crazy or not. We have been doing in-depth case studies on selected topics in the participating countries. We had 9 countries participating all over the world, from New Zealand to Sweden, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, Austria, and I'm forgetting several. So it's a huge collection of knowledge. We've been doing our own analysis of the knowledge, but it's mainly also about collecting a lot of that knowledge, and I'm going to tell you why. I've been told, by the way, to stand near the microphone. Is it okay if I stand here? I like to move around a little bit. When we started the task, we started it because we found that actually given all the technologies that are out there, there is still this huge potential for achieving much more energy efficiency than we are at the moment. And this huge potential is what we call, and what others like Thomas Dietz and Stern call, the behavioral wedge. It's actually the 30% that we could gain in terms of energy efficiency if we would start focusing on behavior. And when I'm talking about behavior, I talk about all types of behavior. Purchasing is just one. Investment behavior is just one of the behaviors. After that, there is a very big behavior that counts, which is use, maintenance, the habits that develop around the way you brush your teeth, or the way you wash, or the way you drive your car, or the way you put your lights on or off, etc. And we need to start focusing on those types of behaviors, including the social acceptance behavior, when we're talking about really big infrastructural issues like wind farms, for example, to actually unlock this behavioral wedge. The reasons, there are many more, but the main reasons that we wanted to start focusing on for not tapping into this potential are multifold, but these are the 4 that we wanted to focus on. The first one is potentially the most important one. I'm sure that most of you are aware of the fact that most of the programs out there have been developed with a notion of the people that receive that program or that campaign as being really rational human beings. And if you provide them with the right incentives, be it financial or information, you will make the right choice. Well, the world doesn't work that way, and everyone knows that, so it's really interesting how they still manage to seep into all those programs. So we wanted to find out why those representations of us, you, me, are being used in a lot of the policy-making programs. Another issue that we wanted to start focusing on and learning more about is the fact that we are not asking people, we are not being asked what we want and why we behave the way we behave. You told the audience, Brian, that we're just starting to learn. But you're a human, you're an energy user, you know why you behave the way you do, but no one asks you why. So that's one of the first things that we actually need to start doing. Instead of pushing the technology. We have a technology, it's good, it's going to save the world and the environment. We just need to get you to accept it. So we're going to devise a lot of really good marketing tips and tricks and segment you, and you're going to be the environmental type, probably, bit on the financial part. We have the right campaign for you. Well, it doesn't work that way. But perhaps even more important as a problem in the way we are doing behavioral change at the moment is the fact that everything that we as scientists and researchers are developing somehow does not get through to policymakers. And if it gets through to policymakers, it doesn't get through to the practice of actually doing the work. So something is going on there, and we started focusing on what's that and how to actually get theory into practice and getting all those minds working together and collaboratively working towards behavioral change and energy efficiency. And last but certainly not least, what we found, and now I'm jumping ahead of the slides, those interventions and programs that are actually really good are the most difficult to evaluate because they are about everything. And they're about changing your lifestyle instead of one behavior. And it's extremely difficult to put that into quantitative terms that are meaningful to policymakers to decide upon whether or not they should fund such a program again next time. So that's more or less what the task was starting from in the back of our minds. I also want to talk a little bit about behavior. Very often when, certainly around retrofitting, the discussions around behavior are ongoing, we seem to talk about one type of behavior, which is the once-off, active information seeking, big type of behavior. So the investment behavior, buying a house, putting insulation in, retrofitting your home, which is something you don't do usually every day. It's big, it's extremely frustrating, complex, scary, very happy when it's over. I'm not sure if it's about the insulation and the warmth and the comfort or the fact that it's over. I'm not sure about that one. But we forget the other side, the side of routines and habits. What do we do with the home after it's been retrofitted? And neglecting this side of the continuum it's the start of a really bad rebound effect where people start heating their whole home because they now have an efficient home. So it's probably really nice if they can heat, for example, multiple rooms at the same time. Or they spend their money saved with the retrofitting on an Argentinian steak in a restaurant, which offsets probably 4 years of energy efficiency in your home. So we need to start thinking about how we use the things that we use. Conclusions. And then I'm going to tell you how we came to the conclusions. The most important conclusion that we have in our task is that actually to achieve lasting, and that's the most important word, because many programs are really good at changing behavior for 2 months, 3 months, or the duration of the program, and then it's over, and people revert to their old behavior. So what we need to start focusing on is actually keeping that behavioral change ongoing, and preferably incrementally growing towards spin-offs, spin-outs, towards mobility, office, whatever. And to do so, we need to stop focus on the individual, we need to stop focus on the technology, and we need to start focus on the social environment of people, family, peers, colleagues, neighbors, role models in society, etc. And that's not all. We also need to start thinking about how we can make unsustainable behavior less desirable and sustainable behavior easier to do. And to do so, you need to also change the environment of people. I mean, I'm from the Netherlands. It's really scary to see the cyclists in Dublin. And I'm sure that if there were physical changes, more of you would take up the bike. So you need, if you want people to start thinking about changing their behavior and keeping doing that behavior, you need to provide them also with the physical, institutional, political, economic environment to be able to sustain that behavior. So here comes the story part. And before you start thinking that I'm some kind of very weird researcher, I want to give you the official scientific explanation why stories really are important in science as well. So it's very much about being able, instead of writing a big report of 30 pages, to come to the essence of what the morale of a case or a story or an experience is, trying to capture the complexity of what you found out there instead of putting it into models that take 5 pages to explain. Just explain it as a story with all the complexities. And it's very much also about trying to figure out how events that take place on a very large scale, politics, national scale, actually impact us in our daily behaviors. Well, they're quick, they're easy to use, etc. But potentially most importantly, we are used to remember stories. You're going to forget about 90% of my PowerPoints. But you're going to remember the two stories that I'm going to tell you, because our brain is wired to remember stories. And this is actually a very powerful tool that we have been using the past 3 years to talk to researchers, policymakers, and to get them to think about what's going on in certain implementations and programs. And it was eye-opening to us and to them how powerful the tool is. So I'm going to tell you a story about what worked. I'm not going to give you a lot of bad examples. I want to inspire you about what's going on in the world, which would be potentially also transferable to Ireland. This is a story about a case that took place in New Zealand, far away, but well, perhaps a little connection also with you. And it's called Warm Up New Zealand. And it's a story about looking beyond energy, trying to figure out how to get people to become both more energy efficient and at the same time meet their needs, which might be completely different from energy needs. What we also did, next to drafting fairy tales, is actually drawing comics for each of the cases. What you see happening here is that in New Zealand they focused on the houses that were really bad, the worst labeled, well, they didn't have a label, but what would be labeled worst in terms of homes at the moment. And they thought that they could make those homes more energy efficient, which of course is very valuable. But what they also found is that actually those homes were colder than what the World Health Organization proposes as a base temperature for people to stay healthy. And in the end, and I'm going to tell you the story in more detail, what happened is those homes were made more energy efficient, but they started using a little bit more energy to actually heat the homes up to 16, 17 degrees. And that saved a lot of other, New Zealand dollars in that sense, but a lot of other things as well. So, here it comes. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful country called New Zealand, which had very cold and damp homes. Every day, Kiwis shivered and froze, but they told each other to stop being a sissy and put on a jumper. I was there, they actually do that. But one day, the new right-wing government decided it needed to show it wasn't uncaring or evil and created a program called Warm Up New Zealand. It was meant to insulate a quarter of the housing stock, create many jobs, so they were thinking about multiple benefits, and a new market, and reduce energy use, energy bills, and CO2. Because of that, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority, which is the SEAI of New Zealand, set about tendering for the best contractors in the country to fulfill this lofty goal. But then they realized that people weren't that interested in insulation. They rather spent their money on a new kitchen and kept putting on those jumpers. Because of that, they concentrated on using third-party providers and other community groups to ensure that at least the most needy and vulnerable people got free insulation and clean heating installed. What happened is those people were very happy with the free insulation and heating, but what they found is, after an evaluation of the program, that the real benefits, $5 New Zealand for each $1 invested, lay in health improvements, not a new market or energy savings or lower bills. They found that the asthma attacks of kids in those homes dropped dramatically. Because of that, the visits to the doctors, the missed school days, the missed work days of parents who needed to take their kids to the doctor dropped dramatically, because of which a lot of productivity was increased. And what they learned is actually that you need to take a much more systemic perspective and try to couple the energy efficiency needs and goals and targets that you have with those that matter to the people in the home. And ever since then, the other Kiwis also slowly realized that being warm and cozy in your home was maybe just as important as having a new kitchen. And the program is still running. They are certifying contractors. It's a huge success. And as I said, the benefits coming out of this program are much, much wider than simply energy efficiency. A little bit of science as well. What we did for each of the cases that we analyzed, and I said that we have 60 and we have 40 more still ready to be analyzed, is actually that most of the interventions that we focused on, consciously or unconsciously, and most often unconsciously, had a theory or a model of behavior and behavior change underpinning this program. We found it's really important to find out what model and what theory underpin the program, because those theories and models, they actually impact the design, the implementation, and the monitoring and evaluation of a program. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to use one or the other model. What we found is that all models are wrong, but some of them are useful. But actually most models are good if you pick and choose them consciously towards the targets that you are aiming for. And if you are not doing that, then you run into trouble. What we also found, and I already warned Peter a little bit about it, but he said don't worry, is that most of the programs that we analyzed in the retrofitting area, or the energy efficiency upgrades in homes and offices, had this, what we call the neoclassical economics perspective, which is this rational person, usually a man, who behaves really rationally if he's being targeted with the right information and the right amount of money to incentivize him in that sense. And what I'm going to ask of you now is even go a bit beyond what I just did with the fairy tale, is close your eyes. Because I'm going and pretend you are this person being targeted by this campaign with this neoclassical economics as a background to the implementation. This is what those types of campaigns actually do say, instead of we have subsidies, etc. So close your eyes, please. Hi there. We have a really, really good subsidy scheme for you. Let me tell you more about it. Money makes the world go round. We all know that. And you need to change your home's energy use, and we will help you by paying part of its retrofitting. By the way, you need to pay up first. You need to pre-finance. And it might take a little while before we pay you back. And that has to do with the fact that, well, we know you lack information to make the right decision, but we need information as well to make sure that you are making the right decision. So you need to go and really go into those technical manuals and find out what the best energy efficiency measures are for your home and report that back to us, and then we can decide if you deserve the money. Don't worry, it will teach you everything you need to know. So you only need actually to make a one-off decision to invest. We have the technology you need. Contractors or installers, well, they're out there. You need to find them. Go on the internet. We can perhaps help a little bit towards what would be good ones, but we don't have a certification scheme. If you don't understand the technology being implemented in your home, just don't touch the buttons. You will save money for a nice weekend to the Bahamas or a nice restaurant. You only need to give us a bill from your installer. We probably won't even check how much energy you actually saved. What counts for us is how many square meters are insulated, how many homes are retrofitted, or how much money is spent from our subsidy scheme. Oh yes, and how many kilowatt hours are saved, of course. But don't worry, we will do the number crunching. Don't worry again, we don't need to know what you actually saved. We have models, and they calculate what you are going to save. Oh, you want to know if you actually saved what we calculated you would save? Buy a metering device. They're out there, again, on the internet. Multiple, just find one. Is that an appealing message? That's actually, I don't want to lash out, but that's what most of those campaigns tell you. And then we wonder why the 80 or 90% don't participate. As I said, they're not wrong, neoclassical economics models, etc. They're not wrong. And they do really well at what they intend to do. So they are really easy to evaluate for policymakers, quantitatively, really good. The retrofitting market actually can grow because the supply side is really stimulated. The subsidy usually is used up to the max, right? Many homes are insulated. They do manage to nudge a certain percentage of people, and sometimes if you're lucky and if there's a peer-to-peer type of word-of-mouth type of process going on, there is potential for a new social norm to emerge that might get the other 80-90% to also think about it. And what's also interesting is that the participants of these programs, at least in several of the countries that we analyzed, when they were asked if they already had decided to retrofit before the subsidy scheme, they said yes. But they are not free riders, because what happens is they started retrofitting much more comprehensively because of the subsidy scheme, which is a good thing in itself. But as I said, every model also has its drawbacks. And these type of programs, they are one-off. So there's no continuity after they took place. And the paradox, as I already did in the little story, is that they tackle the information and money deficit, but they ask for pre-financing and for you to do a lot of research to actually get the information you need. They hardly allow for any flexibility other than financial flexibility in terms of the subsidy, or technical flexibility tailored to your home. And they are certainly not focused on actually getting you to use your home in a different way, which is really dangerous for the rebound effect that I discussed earlier. And the big question is, are these models enough to actually create a demand for energy efficiency? And I would say no. There's also, on the other side of the continuum, a totally different type of, very often combination, eclectically used combination of many social sciences and social theories, which focus much more on the systemic elements, on context and the environment and changing those as well, on collaboration between many partners, and as such also allowing for multiple definitions of success and allowing for multiple benefits to merge from this collaboration. They're about building trust in market parties, so very often they have certification schemes, training programs for auditors or other types of contractors. So they do create also a type of institutional change. They're about lifestyle changes, so they are not one sectoral type of program developed in one department of the ministry, but actually focus on your life and how everything works in your life and interacts and is interrelated. They are very much focused on you, the end user, and what you need and what you want, so they ask what you need and what you want. And they do pre-scope, so they make sure that they have a zero starting point in terms of the behavior you perform, the energy use, etc., to be sure to be able to tell you if you did something that changed the way you use energy. And they are very much about engagement and participation, about being flexible. Very often these programs change their targets and their goals when they are ongoing, which is a nightmare in terms of monitoring and evaluation. If your primary goals are, if they disappeared, how do you assess success? And perhaps most importantly, they are about creating a new social norm and targeting those other percentage of people. But as I said, they are really complex. It's a nightmare sometimes to run these type of programs. It's about collaboration, which is difficult with different agendas, different needs, etc., of different parties. Try to get a hospital and a contractor and a municipality and a NGO together working on a program. That's quite a challenge. And as I said, they are really difficult to evaluate quantitatively, which is a nightmare for funders and policymakers. But they do work. And I'm going to tell you another fairy tale about a program that ran in Sweden, near Stockholm. It's a bit a longer story, but it's really interesting. So once upon a time, there were 6 neighborhoods around the field of Jarwa near Stockholm that were in urgent need of improvement. The area had been constructed in the 60s and 70s during a program called the 1 Million Home Program, initiated by the Swedish government to tackle a growing housing deficit. So the neighborhoods contained housing units for more than 60,000 people. And the buildings were really turning old and were outdated. So every day, people in the area were experiencing economic and social challenges, because the people living there were foreign residents very often, unemployed, who had difficulties learning the Swedish language. The younger generation had difficulty getting the proper education or good opportunities for employment afterwards. And the houses they lived in were terribly inefficient. Several investments had been undertaken during the years to improve the situation, but nothing really worked, and people felt they were not being heard. But one day, the city of Stockholm decided that it would once again invest in the area to improve the living conditions of the people living there. But this time it would be different. So they had realized that the circumstances had changed, that they were radically different from the 60s and 70s, and they realized that in order for upgrading those homes, and being successful in it, they needed to include the residents and all of their needs from the beginning. So because of that, what they did is initiating a dialogue. During 1 week, 10,000 of those 60,000 people participated, and they provided 30,000 suggestions and ideas for improving their lives, not their homes alone. And based on these contributions, the Vision Jarwa 2030 was formulated, and measures were being planned for the short term. And they chose 4 areas: improved housing and urban environment, everyday security, better education and language teaching, and more jobs and entrepreneurship. But of course, it was not all. They also needed to do something about the energy efficiency. So what they started doing is create the Sustainable Jarwa project. It was introduced to also bring about an environmental, climate, and energy focus in the development as a means to reach, that's important, energy efficiency as a means to reach the other goals that actually mattered to the people. Finally, the dialogue with the residents continued, and together with all stakeholders, many great measures were planned and implemented to promote sustainable lifestyles. Satisfaction was high, well-being was much better, peer-to-peer training was being used to get people to rethink the way they used their home, word of mouth was being used to get people to rethink the way they used waste or produced waste. A new social norm around living started emerging. Mobility was also changed. They redid the whole urban area to allow for a sense of security and a sense of inviting a different kind of mobility than cars. And it worked. Instead of having a lot of cars, people started using car sharing facilities. Entrepreneurs from around got involved, employed the young people that were part of the change, and the physical environment was dedicated to sustain the new behavior. And ever since then, and I really can recommend going there, the neighborhoods around the field of Java have become a place where people actually want to live instead of wanting to leave. And the ultimate goal of the project, to make Java into a model and inspiration for other stakeholders working on sustainable development, is working. So nationally and internationally, a lot of people go there, learn about how to do this collaborative approach focused on using energy efficiency as a means to reach other goals. So that's Java. To sum up, more or less, what we found in the 58 other case studies. And I think I have 20 pages of a list, but I made a selection. What you need to do, so the how-to, is actually not only focus on the individual, but also, as I said, the social environment. Use peer-to-peer, use word of mouth, involve the family, involve the colleagues, involve the staff, engage, and think that it's about the fact that it's not what you buy, but it's how you use it as well. That makes the difference. And retrofitting in that way, like Sustainable Java demonstrated, can be a gateway to actually get much more energy efficiency ongoing in other sectors as well. So it's not about changing light bulbs, but about changing life and work styles. Think of the non-energy benefits. If you really must push the technology, think about the non-energy benefits of the technology as well. And focus on the why of a behavior. Ask people why they behave the way they do, because that will provide you the insight. And you can do that with a quantitative approach, with a survey, but make sure you also do a qualitative approach with face-to-face meetings to check if the survey findings are actually good. And better even, start with the qualitative approach and then do the survey based on the qualitative approach. Partner up. So go as broad as possible. It will give you a toolbox of interventions, and it will you allow to go beyond the kilowatt-hour approach. Pre-scope, benchmark out, measure, model, as I said before, and do not leave the monitoring up to those that you are targeting, because that is the most, I don't know if that's an English word, demotivational thing for people if they are being targeted and they then are left on their own finding out if the behavior that they change actually made an impact. It's the worst thing you can do to people. And think about the fact that simply throwing information at them is not enough. It needs to be meaningful. And to make it meaningful, you need people. You need intermediaries, you need peers, you need, for example, train-the-trainer type of approaches, which are fantastic. They have been doing it in Manchester, in Finland, in the Netherlands, youth ambassadors, and that's a sure way towards getting more success than if you don't. Learn from the unwilling. So those that do not want to participate are at least as important as those that want to participate. Find out why, because that will give you the entrance to actually get to the other 80%. And be aware that certainly first users, I have loads of beautiful examples where the man in the home wanted to become more energy efficient and started implementing a lot of measures, and then his family screwed up the whole thing. For example, he installed a better heating system, because of which the water of the shower was much nicer, and the changes of the tubes created a stronger water pressure. Thank you. And what happened? The kids and the wife sabotaged his whole attempt because they wanted this big rain shower. So his water went up, energy use went up. So people have families, and you need to target them as well. And workers have colleagues who also are very good at sabotaging. Distribution issues matter. People are not stupid. We see it most clearly in the smart grid approaches, where people know that the smart meter was not developed to help them, but help the grid operators first, and have been turned into something that now also might help them save energy. Be transparent. It's also in the retrofitting area. be transparent about who gains, who loses, what, how, why. Very important. And finally, participation is key. Co-create. This is only a very small selection of the lessons learned in retrofitting. We also did smart metering. We did transport. That's Arnold Schwarzenegger with his hammer, but he's a vegetarian. And SMEs. So we have a monster report, we call it. We also made a nice little booklet with the comic strips and the fairy tales to highlight the lessons learned. But we also have a scientific report. We actually have 40 reports that you can download. Everything is available on the net. And if you can't find it, ask me. But we're not finished. So we collected all this information from all over the world, discussed it with a lot of the experts that are helping us, and we are now moving into phase 2. So we got an extension from the IEA, who luckily saw the importance of the work we were doing. And this extension is called Helping the Behavior Changers. You, in a way. And what we're going to do for the next 3 years, almost finished, 1 minute. Okay, I'm going to talk very fast. What we're going to do is actually develop, with the behavior changes in the countries that are participating, a toolbox of interventions that will help them tackle a very specific issue that they want to focus on. So we're going to put all this knowledge and theory into practice. We're going to do it. That's more or less this slide in less than a minute. And we're going to do it by defining what matters to the countries that participate, what they want to focus on, identifying all the stakeholders that might be important to actually tackle this issue, so way beyond the energy field in that sense. And if it's within an organization, not only the management, but all the rest of the staff, the IT persons, the building facilitators, etc. And start working with them using a tool that I'm going to talk very quickly about called Collective Impact Tool. All of this will be, again, turned into a really big box of toolkits, tools, and we will continue to work on developing a standardized way of evaluating behavioral change and evaluating the impacts of behavior change programs in demand-side management that go beyond kilowatt hours. So this is the collective impact framework that we're going to use very quickly. It's about getting all the stakeholders that matter together, being open about agendas, mandates, risks that they take, benefits that they need, etc., and tackle the issue as a systemic issue instead of a sectoral or a departmental issue, and in that sense work towards what works. I talked a little bit with Jim up front, and he told me, but that's open for discussion, that for Ireland, for example, the shift from energy upgrades from niche to normal is a key issue at the moment. So that would be one of the things that we could focus on. I already talked about the risks and the benefits, etc. And this is the behavior changer framework that we're using. It's the collective impact, but then turned into a model. So what we do is actually involve all the stakeholders, and they use things like role-playing, but they mainly provide input as to what we need to think about when we want them to participate in the project, with the end user or the problem in the middle, the behavior, technology, social, infrastructural, environmental, and conscious levels that you also need to tackle. And in the end, it looks like this, which is frightening, but we understand what's out there. And this is being turned in the next 2 years into active implementations. So it's not only paperwork, it's actually working towards implementing it in practice. So thank you very much. I hope I didn't put you too much out of your comfort zone with the fairy tales, etc. If you have any comments, if you would like to start participating on the expert platform that we have, you're very welcome, and I look forward to hearing more from you about Ireland and what you face, etc. So that's it.